This is a quick introduction to threat modelling and analysis, looking at the STRIDE categorization scheme. This is going to cover the theory, and in a future video I'm going to show you how this can be put into a practice with a real-world example. Threat modelling is a way to identify, categorise and analyse threats, looking at the potential harm, the possibility of occurrence, i.e. the likelihood, the priority of concern, and then the means to eradicate or reduce the threat. One of the reasons for threat modelling is being able to identify where to deploy resources based on the risks and the importance of the data and systems. For example, you wouldn't need the same level of security for an information system that shows the canteen menu on an internal display, as you might need on a system that holds client credit card information. In an ideal world, you would want them both to be secure. In the real world, you need to identify the risks and deploy appropriate resources accordingly. The threat modelling is also important for all the services, but the actual risks and resources may vary based on different systems. So when to perform the analysis? You can perform analysis at just about any stage in the software lifecycle. This diagram is based around a typical software development lifecycle. The same diagram would be used if you're using off-the-shelf software, with the development being replaced by selection and configuration of the software. As a general rule, the earlier you perform the analysis, the cheaper it is to add the additional security. It's usually a good idea to revisit the analysis at a later stage in case anything changes. The life cycle normally starts with the strategy at the top and then goes clockwise. You really need some kind of initial design to start the analysis, although you could even start before then if you have some ideas of how it will be implemented. There are an almost infinite number of threats. It's therefore important to take a structured approach. We look at this by focusing on assets, so identify the value of the assets and threats to them. Or it could be focused on attackers. You may want to focus on potential attackers and threats based on their motivation for trying to attack you. This is particularly relevant to certain organisations who may have information or resources that may be targeted. Or it could be focused on software. If you're developing software, then you can look at the software during the development process to ensure that you include security features in that. So here I'm looking at STRIDE. This is a threat categorization scheme from Microsoft. This is something that can be applied to software development, but it can also be used for off-the-shelf products as a way you can review suitability and specific configurations. STRIDE is a mnemonic, and it describes the possible attack vectors against a system. S for spoofing, T for tampering, R for repudiation, I for information disclosure, D for denial of service, and E for elevation of privilege. Spoofing is essentially pretending to be someone else or some other device. This may allow them to get through filters or blockades. This may be one reason that less important systems still need to be kept secure in case they're used as a stepping stone to more important systems. Another thing that an attacker may be trying to achieve is to get a higher privilege than they are otherwise entitled to. Different from elevation of privilege, which I'll explain later, but this is where you're trying to get straight in as a higher privileged user. As it suggests, tampering is the manipulation of data. This could be in storage, such as saved on disk or in a database, or it could be in transit, which could mean travelling over a network connection or being transferred from disk to memory. One of the concerns about tampering is identifying what damage has been done. For example, knowing whether the data that you're looking at is safe or whether it's been tampered with. Repudiation is about identifying who has done what on a system. It's about stopping someone claiming, as Shaggy would say, "It wasn't me." In some circumstances, this goes hand in hand with spoofing, in that if someone is able to spoof an entry, then how can you prove who is responsible? There is also the risk that a third party could be being blamed for something that's been done by somebody else. Information disclosure is when some private, confidential or controlled information is stolen. Particular concerns include personal identifiable information, credit card details or company secrets. But it could also include information that allows the attacker further access or makes it easier for them to impersonate someone. In the event of an information disclosure, then it may be necessary to notify clients, and it can result in damage to the company reputation. A denial of service is where an attacker prevents the authorised use of a resource. This may include a service such as a website. It could mean that a business is unable to operate if this is an attack against a service that is needed to keep that business running. Imagine computers controlling a manufacturing production line. An escalation of privilege is where someone is able to increase their level of permission, perhaps gaining admin or root privileges. To perform the stride analysis, you normally start with a data flow diagram, such as the one shown here. This identifies where data flows from one system or part of a system to another. You then look at each of the data flows and apply the 6 attack types and identify the threats and risks. You can then build up an analysis based on the identified threats. This screen here shows the Microsoft Threat Analysis tool, which is one of the ways that you can do this. Alternatively, you could do this manually, looking at common threats. There are pros and cons to each method, and I'll be looking at these in much more detail in a future video. Stride is just one of the threat modelling tools that can be used. It is simple to apply. It's something I've recently used on an open source project I'm working on. This video has been an introduction to the theory, but I also plan to make a video showing how this can be applied to the actual project. So if you'd like to see that and other cybersecurity videos, please click subscribe and click on the notification icon to get notified about them. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in a future video.